So this video is a perfect example of a new law in musical criticism today and the absolute failure of any dialectic judgment in musical criticism. So let's take a look what's happening. Let's establish the dialectic of aesthetic judgment first. The widespread discussion surrounding the Arnold Schönberg's invention of Dodecaphony, so the 12-tone music, particularly as presented in contemporary media, encapsulates a persistent challenge within music aesthetics. And this is the reconciliation of radical structural innovation with an immediate auditory experience. So the central premise of the modern critic, often framed as a dichotomy, is always Schoenberg music is ugly or revolutionary. Is Schoenberg's music ugly or a fruit of a revolutionary genius? This simplifies a complex musicological issue into a consumer-friendly binary perfect for idiots. The problem of a bad formulation of a problem is still in philosophy very present in the history of the philosophy and in a lot of academic works in philosophy. Just for you get one idea, here in Vienna in the Symposium for Phenomenology in Colloquium, I criticized a master thesis showing that the author failed in the formulation of the problem. So he was the whole time writing about a problem that does not exist. And I showed this to him. And yes, and I had to empathize with him because it was sad. but this is the thing. But at least there was the intellectual honesty to perceive the point of my objection. This was a very hard occasion in my whole academic life. Okay, so is Schoenberg's music ugly or something of a revolutionary genius? The dichotomy is already completely flawed. We are going to take a look on this, and this is the type of wrong problem formulation of problem that we have in this video, the ugly music of Arnold Schönberg. So it simplifies a complex musicological issue into a consumer-friendly binary. It's the second video that I watch of this kind, and it is very well received and promoted by the algorithm, while me here doing serious work, I have a hard time. This report that I'm trying to do here, so this more or less dossier type of video, is actually not about this video that you are watching there on the screen, the ugly music of Arnold Schönberg, but it's also an opportunity to show some things regarding how music criticism works and how it could work better. So we are going to employ a sophisticated dual critique, so applying the methodologies of two historic giants of music criticism and history. So the Karl Dahlhaus, so the 20th century German structural historian, and Hector Berlioz, the romantic composer that is also a critic. Okay, many people ignore this very important aspect of the production of Hector Berlioz, his musical criticism. These two figures represent fundamentally opposing yet equally demanding standards for evaluating musical worth. enabling a thorough assessment of this video's rhetoric, the arguments, the conclusion, and principally his credibility. So Karl Dahlhaus, he approached the matter through the lens of historical philosophy and an internal structural logic, what I call immanent point of view. He does this seeking to ground aesthetic judgment in objective technical coherence. So this is a process he termed the immanent criticism. So his concern actually lies with the intrinsic relationship that define the musical work as a historically aware entity. This he wrote in his Fundamentals of Music History, a book that is dense, but that I highly recommend. I don't know if I recommend. It's very dense. It's philosophically dense. So this is why you need my course in philosophy for composers. He speaks a lot about Hegel, etc., and it already assumes that you studied Hegel and Plato, etc. Conversely, the Hector Berlioz, he evaluates music based on its capacity for dramatic realization, the emotional intensity, and the powerful, like almost neurophysiological effect it has on listeners. But he wants the listeners with the so-called cultivated faculties. This was a concept that obviously died in our culture. The idea of being a cultivated listener. Also, David Hume spoke about this. His criticism prioritizes artistic expression, technical virtuosity, especially in orchestration, and the rhetoric force of music. So how you convey the message using musical elements. By applying these two rigorous contrasting aesthetic apparat, so how I can say in English, this contrasting aesthetic things, okay, so by applying these two rigorous contrasting aesthetic point of view, better say, to the discussion of Schönberg's works, such as so Verklärte Nacht, Pierrot Lunaire, and String Quartet, number 3. The analysis reveals where the modern presentation succeeds in providing context and where it fundamentally fails to meet the standards of authoritative critical discourse. So now let's talk about Karl Dahlhaus and the critique of historical rigor and structural coherence. So let's talk about the immanent criticism and the work concept. Karl Dahlhaus actually, he centered his musical research, his musicological research, on the establishment of aesthetics as a major scholarly discipline. This is his very crucial importance. For Dahlhaus, the aesthetic value of music is intrinsically tied to its technical and compositional setup. A linkage he defined through the method of immanent criticism, as we spoke already before. No? This method requires that any aesthetic moment be related to the compositional output, allowing for the distinction between compositionally right and wrong decisions without returning to abstract and ahistorical rules. So Dahlhaus' critique is therefore deeply concerned with the Werk, Begriff. So this is the work concept, the artwork concept. This is the idea that music exists as a defined phenomenological entity whose aesthetic structure reflects its specific historical context. The Dahlhausian framework demands that critics analyze the work based on intrinsic connections, separating these internal structural considerations from extrinsic factors, such as social context or biographical narrative. He writes this in a very explicit manner in his Foundations of Music History. But there he explains that the context is important, but not the point of departure. The context is still important. So the World War One, two, it's important, but it's not exactly the point of departure. The importance of the context in the Dahlhaus type of critique is actually not easy to understand, because he doesn't fully ignore the context, but what he doesn't want is to set the context and the extrinsic point of view as the primary point of view. This video that we have, of the ugly music of Schönberg, it highlights actually the mechanic foundation of dodecaphony only. So noting how Schönberg relied on tone rolls, the motifs, and the rhythm to maintain the coherence. So it's the only thing. But the Dahlhaus engagement with Schönberg's theory provide a highly specific and devastating musicological critique of this very premise. I don't know how to pronounce it, premise. Yes, it is a failure. Premise or premise. Schönberg claimed that his method processed the structural logic of Stimmigkeit, coherence, and Fasslichkeit, comprehensibility. That is even more important. So terms deeply resonant with the classical and romantic traditions he sought to continue. Stimmigkeit and Fasslichkeit is what built his concept of musical logic. This is what I wrote about in one of my theses at Mozarteum. However, Dahlhausian analysis reveals a fundamental theoretical weakness in the 12-tone technique. When applied to complex structure, such as the string quartet number 3 mentioned in the video, the system often proves incapable of bearing inherent hierarchical arrangements among the voices. The melodic lines might be entirely independent, articulated by developing variation. But the underlying dodecaphony laws do not suffice to create a clear structural hierarchy. This is a type of criticism that would be valid, and it is something that I also perceive it. So it's like Schoenberg imports the musical logic of the Viennese classicism into a harmony that does not respect this logic, so to say, that contradicts this logic. So the logic of the tonal music has an hierarchy of motifs, of developments, textural hierarchy, okay? Formal hierarchy, principally, of the musical form. But the harmony, so the Tonsatz, the dodecaphonic Tonsatz, does not express or harmonize or combine with this intrinsic necessity of hierarchy given by the musical logic of the Viennese classicism, or the common practice tonality. So here you have musical criticism. Okay, so this is how you teach another student in composition as well. It's not calling the the composer ugly. So this guy, if he would teach composition, probably he the only thing that he could say about your music is ugly. So this won't work, my friend, because the students, they come with all possible pieces of music, and all of them are ugly. And so so you need to find a good ugly piece of music, the ugly but well made. This is the thing with the teaching of musical composition. So you see the decadence. Without good basic musical criticism, we don't have even good musical good pedagogy of musical composition. So it's impossible with ignorance like this. I didn't even told my whole analysis here, but what can I say? It is like very ignorant. By the way, extending this footnote, why he's so ignorant? Because he does like a history of a biographic overview of Arnold Schoenberg as a premise to conclude an aesthetic judgment. He confused himself in the things. It's not like it's bad. He gave an intro, okay, but it's like completely disnecessary for the whole point. So you want to introduce the Schoenberg, and at the same time say that he's ugly. This is very questionable. Imagine if, for example, I taught history of music classes, no? Imagine I introduce the Guilherme Dufay, the fabulous composer, and I already judge. No, he's bad. I don't know, man. So it's like questionable. Anyways, coming back, this was an example then of an immanent criticism. Okay, what we talked about. Now coming back, the consequence of this structural limitation is profound. So the analytical results of such music, the dodecaphonic music, often become unverifiable within the composition's structure. This is the critique of Dahlhaus. So the meaningfulness of the work therefore relies on the interpreter's willingness to trust the composer's decision, rather than demonstrating a self-evident structural necessity. Dahlhaus would criticize the video's argument, for example, if this were the case, for describing the application of the system, so how tone rows function, without addressing this deeper musicological problem. The system's philosophical failure to achieve truly intrinsic structural coherence equivalent to that found in tonal masterpiece would. So how can I explain this? He would criticize the video for describing the application of the system without addressing this deeper musicological problem. But what is the deeper musicological problem? It is this failure. It is a philosophical failure to achieve truly intrinsic structural coherence, equivalent to that found in tonal masterpiece. So the tonal masterpiece, they have a type of hierarchy that the technique of the tone row contradicts. This is the thing. So Dahlhaus would criticize this guy saying how why don't you perceive this? Okay. So by summarizing the technique without probing its structural limitations, the video fails to perform the task of critical judgment required by Dahlhaus standards. Now, let's talk about the rhetoric and the credibility here also. And also the rejection for extrinsic justification. So extrinsic justification is the contrary of what I was trying to exemplify here. So Dahlhaus' critique extends forcefully to the video's rhetorical framing and its selection of supporting evidence. The video leveraged significant biographical material, emphasizing Schönberg's personal tragedy and his escape from Nazi Europe. For Dahlhaus, this approach undermines critical rigor. He explicitly advocated distinguishing extrinsic relationships, like sociology of knowledge, from the theory of history that examines intrinsic connections of the music itself. The heavy reliance on biographic context serves as a form of emotional scaffolding, attempting to justify difficult music through the composer's struggle rather than through its compositional merit. Dahlhaus would dismiss this as a reversion to the discredited biography in notes view of artistic history. Such a move compromised the credibility of the analysis by making the work hostage to non-musical circumstance. Furthermore, the opening binary of ugly or genius falls squarely into the category of aesthetic impressionism, which Dahlhaus sought rigorously to overcome. For him, criticism is a complex intellectual endeavor that requires turning subjective impressions into compelling narratives articulated and justified by technical depth. So basically, from Dahlhaus' point of view, you can't do musical criticism without going to the scoring and analyzing, studying the score. It's basically like this. The term ugly is a purely subjective aesthetic judgment. It is like telling the whole point that we want to show, lacking grounding in Schönberg's compositional setup. Dahlhaus would demand that the critic transcend this superficial impressionism by analyzing the formal problems Schönberg was addressing, such as the conceptual limits of form, thereby excluding the ugly label as irrelevant to serious structural criticism. And I go beyond this. The category ugly is not problematic for the expressionist type of thinking. So the whole discussion here, I don't want to destroy the author of the video yet, but if we push the buttons of the expressionist aesthetic, to call it ugly is like not a big deal, because the expressionist composer, he cares about the truth, not about the beauty. Okay? Paf. Boom. Now, Dahlhaus' critique of the conclusion, let's say, so the paradox of this conservatism, radicalism. So this is, yes, his view is like a conservative radicalism, if you can put like this here, this chorale harmony here. The video concludes that Schönberg's rebellion is against tonality itself. Dahlhaus' perspective offers a significant historical qualification to this seemingly straightforward revolutionary narrative. Dahlhaus understood Schönberg as a figure who, despite his radical technical break, fundamentally retained the romantic status of the artist and the classical concept of genius. Schönberg's strong belief in historical progress, supported by rational arguments, motivated the move to Dodecaphony, not merely to shatter convention, but to provide a replacement system capable, of sustaining the formal integrity of the musical work. So Schönberg was the whole time caring a lot about his philosophical assumptions in music theory. So this is why the book Theory of Harmony, so the harmony layer, is so long. Think about this. Now comes any moron because he can say that the music of Schoenberg is ugly, then he gets popular, like saying the obvious, basically, no? Because everyone finds the music of Schoenberg ugly anyway, so without even knowing nothing about it. So, and again, the ugly itself is a problem that I don't want to develop here, but in another video where we talk about the aesthetic of the ugly of the Rosenkranz. But I don't want to reveal the best part of my course, Philosophy of Music, as well. So this is why I just, on YouTube here, I just throw bombs, I just destroy the stupidity around us. So so this is the point. So his belief in historical progress, so Schoenberg's belief in historical progress, supported by rational arguments, this is what motivated Dodecaphony. It's not about just shatter convention. This is so stupid take. Imagine how easy it is for Schoenberg to just collide with tradition. This is a very wrong take, and I believe that Adorno helped us to develop this misconception about Schoenberg himself. So it was not about this type of shocking type of creation, but to provide a replacement system capable of sustaining the formal integrity of the musical work. So they were really experiencing a problem of creativity, a new loser that I can't even identify as a composer because I don't know your name. You don't even put your name here. Okay, so it's everything AI, no name, and basically I start to suspect he is AI generated. Then comes this guy and starts to rule over Schönberg. He's the second one that gets popular with this. The other one I already debunked in another video. So you can't identify the person. This is the problem of the credibility. I think the most important problem, because arguments they can never deliver an argument. So then at least credibility. And in music, if you are teaching music, credibility is the thing. So you don't have to give argument. Imagine if I would have to give argument for all the time when I use the theory of functions. Like, come on. So when you are teaching as an artist, your credibility is your portfolio and with whom you learned. It's simple like this. So my credibility are my teachers, my previous teachers, and the music that I did. This is my credibility. I can't go forward. I didn't study with Delamotte. I studied with the assistant of Delamotte. This is the limit of my credibility, for example. And I can't do nothing anymore. What I can do is try to compose better and to teach better. But the argument is not important in any situation. But when you are doing theoretic work of this kind, like big topic, big statements, what are you doing? Are you teaching a student? No, you are shaping the opinion of a whole culture about Arnold Schoenberg. It's not a mega viral video, but it reflects how we think as a culture. So the implication is that Schoenberg's rebellion against tonality was in a profound sense structurally conservative. This is the thing. So we have this view of Adorno, the negative dialectic, that blurs a little bit the true reality in Schoenberg's mind. In one sense, he was conservative. In another sense, he was a rebel. And how can you understand this? It's exactly like Bach. Bach was conservative and already progressive. So he was using a musical technique that was not alive for a long time. Alone because of the tuning and of the modulations. Of course, it's another time, but it's a similar thing. And Haydn, what is Haydn? Man. So the Mannheim school, totally different, suddenly. So the string quartets of Haydn, he were totally different. Where is the chamber? Where is the figured bass? How you start composing our music without figured bass? In Monteverdi, even more. So conservative or progressive, shocking. So the video's framing here, which portrays him as an unilateral revolutionary focused simply on negation, risks overlooking the crucial link he maintained with tradition, specifically his adherence to the traditional demands of coherence and comprehensibility. So the best concept of Schoenberg was the idea of musical logic, that, by the way, I have been trying to make it more precise in my private, intimate studies. By missing this paradoxical element, the video's conclusion simplifies Schoenberg's complex historical position, failing to meet Dahlhaus standards for historically nuanced judgment. There you have it. So, what else can I say? Let's do a recap. So we have this standard of Dahlhaus, the immanent criticism and the anti-impressionism. And with this standard, you can attack his whole rhetoric of the ugly or the genius, this ugly genius binary. And this fails because it grounds the judgment in subjective opinion. So the ugly rather than the technical setup. So the Stimmigkeit, for example, the coherence. Do you get the point? And why this fails? Because his video will be way more popular if you don't analyze the score, no? Now, he tries to use biographical focus in the argumentation. This is intrinsic versus extrinsic relationship problem under the Dahlhausen standard. So it fails because it is prioritizing the extrinsic, for example, the tragedy, the exile of Schönberg over intrinsic, so the structural logic concerns. So prioritizing extrinsic over intrinsic concerns. Returning to this biography in notes type of criticism. This would be very, very questionable. But from the Dahlhausen perspective, I have a point here. I still find that because I am also a little bit hermeneut, I think that it depends on the type of artwork, of musical artwork. I think for some types of musical artworks, the extrinsic starts to be the substantial point of departure in your criticism. I don't know. But I am not so intelligent as Dahlhaus was. This is the point here. So now this argument, so the structural coherence, well, he criticized it, but he the only thing that he can say is check how the quartet sounds. It sounds so. If I tell someone, hey, this will sound ugly, and then I play, then of course you are already listening to it as ugly. This is also a problem. You are violating this virginity of the musical appreciation. Okay. And if you use the Dahlhausen standard regarding this point, you will go to the score and analyze where is the Stimmigkeit, the coherence, and where is the Fasslichkeit, the comprehensibility. Okay? Both components of the musical logic. So this part misses the core problem. So dodecaphony often fails to establish inherent structural hierarchy without the composer's imposed decision. This would be the criticism that would be partially successful. So this would be the best way here. Still, can you call it ugly because of this? This is another thing. This is another problem. In Mozarteum, I had a teacher the Christian Offenbauer, he loved to speak about if the musical artwork was gelungen, so if it succeeded or not. I find an interesting perspective, but when you focus too much on this and you forget that the point is also to make it beautiful or to cause an impact sometimes, then you have the music that is totally empty, even if it succeeded. Okay, das Werk ist gelungen. Okay, gelungen, but it doesn't move my heart, my friend. Okay, so I don't want only gelungen or a work of art that only succeeds. I want an impact. I want the Nazareth. Love hurts. Okay, so I want the love hurts of Nazareth right from the first verse. It has impact. Anyways, but I understand this point of view because not all the musical artworks, they are about emotion. I really don't think also like this. I think that the music that we like to listen is, but But in this development of the concert music, you should understand that there are way more interesting things, not way more, but there are other different very interesting things to do as just cause emotion, and this is one. This type of Schoenberg experiment, you can't tell that this is not fucking cool. Okay, no, you can't tell this. Principally, the woodwind quintet, you can tell that this is not awesome. The Dodecaphonic, no, you can tell it's not awesome. So here I think he tried to pick a bad example, in my opinion, where it won't work, because the Schoenberg already, just from the visual perspective here, you already see that it has a depth with tonal music. Okay, just by the texture alone. This is why Anton Webern is so awesome. Then he is the true magus of this whole thing. Webern perceived, no, it won't work this way, so let's cut and create very radical diagonality. So it's not vertical, it's not horizontal, so it's diagonal. Okay, and now the another component of the video, so the credibility. No, forget credibility. So another thing that I would like to say is this aesthetics of absolute music versus genius. So this risks simplifying Schoenberg's paradoxical claim to classical continuity into mere revolution against tonality. Okay, exactly. This was the last point. So we start to see him as a rebel, and can't see him as a traditional composer anymore. So you kill one of the elements of the dichotomy. So was Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, a conservative or a revolutionary? So these dichotomies, they need a very strict appreciation and evaluation to not lead to important confusions of thought. Now, because the video is too long, about the Berlioz type of musical criticism that is very different. I do another time because I am tired. I am doing this for free, so you can leave a super thanks, and then I can keep another time, because I have the notes here, because this was part of my history of contemporary music, my friend, of modern music actually, so the last century. And then this guy had the bad luck of being my my victim. But it was very good, because then this helped me teach the students how to frame things, and which is a valid, serious discourse, and which type of discourse is just the promotion of cultural stupefication. Okay, so thanks very much. See you later. Please remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and principally hit the bell. Otherwise, you will never know about my videos. So my videos, they are like they run in the shadows of YouTube. See you later.